Hi, everybody. It's me, I'm Ron. It's the show with Ron, and I guess it's about time for another news wrap up. Let's see if I can say some things about the end of the year here. We've had an amazing, weird year that has exposed a lot about the news that I've been saying for a little over a year when I started to cover the election, the U.S. election last October, about how the things were being said in the news to give us a certain impression, and we found out that a lot of that was not real. Uh, we can start here. This was a very interesting article. It's behind a paywall, and I noted, here we have Democrats don't have a shortcut out of the wilderness. Kind of an idiomatic, I think, expression saying that they're lost in the wilderness. They're a little shocked by their election defeat. Certainly, part of this is because the media was working so hard to give the impression that Kamala Harris was a shoo-in and Donald Trump was a joke, which is exactly what they did in 2016. That sort of led to a shock or surprise defeat for Hillary Clinton. It happened again. And I also wanted to note, I don't know if you can see this. It's an interesting phenomenon. I don't know the reason for it, but interesting how over time the headlines of these articles are shortened. So now the article is on New York Times and it's called "Democrats Don't Have an Easy Way Out." Don't know why they do that, but maybe it's for the algorithm, how it's set up on Google or whatever. But now I touched on some of the issues of this article. I think this article is pretty good. It's it's not completely anti-Trump or trying to paint things in a certain way, as so much of the media was doing before the election. And one of the takeaways from all of this is how the the Democrats are now identified, or were identified with the public, with kind of niche social issues. This is the woke things, the woke agenda that everybody was talking about, and also with a full embrace of internationalism, the international system that really was put into place by Reagan and the Republicans, taken up by Clinton in the 90s. This includes engagement in wars overseas, the U.S. as the world's policeman, that sort of thing. Now, that's a flip-flop of the traditional way of looking at it. It was the Republicans that were very much pushing this internationalism and free trade and foreign intervention and strong, robust overseas presence. And it was the Democrats who always said, well, wars are bad. They're terrible. Innocent people get killed. We can't afford that. It's wrong. We don't want to be the international policeman. That's flipped. Now the Republicans are saying that, and the Democrats have found themselves holding the bag of internationalism and lots of agreements with overseas countries for free trade, which many Americans see as just siphoning jobs away to countries that are unfriendly to the United States. And then, strangely enough, as well, Trump in the election got kind of identified with the common working man, and more aligned with economic concerns of the common man. Again, hold on one second. Sorry. So Trump is identified with the economic interests of the common man. And I suppose I was going to make this point later, but I can say it now. Maybe if you want to be charitable to Harris, the Democrats, their campaign, it's very difficult for an incumbent sitting government in the United States to win an election when the economy is not good, when inflation is hurting people. Of course, the Democrats for most of the election handled that by having the mass media tell people they were mistaken about the economy and things have never been better. And you'll find lots of articles about that still. And by looking at the U.S. economy in a kind of a macro level, the power that people have in some sort of spending power, you could say, yeah, well, now it's better. And certainly Biden said that several times during his campaign. But, it's kind of everyday inflation. It's people noting that their groceries cost 3 times as much, fast food costs 4 times as much, and there's just no getting around that, no matter how many times the New York Times runs articles that say, you're just mistaken if you think that. They call it the vibe economy. People are getting the wrong idea that they're paying 3 or 4 times more for McDonald's. They're delusional, I guess. But anyway, that's a mistake. I don't know if the Democrats will continue to make that mistake, to use the media in that way, because most of the media has shown it can be used in that way. And then the smaller part of the media, which leans to the Republicans, which I would say is Fox and Twitter, it's so extreme and ridiculous. Overall, it leads, I think, many Americans to not trust the media at all and not have a clear idea of what's really going on. Now, back to this article. The article does make the good point about talking. They have to bring back that Trump's an authoritarian and he's anti-democratic because he wishes to punish, I think in his words, institutions such as the bureaucracy, the military, if they resist his initiatives, which certainly seemed to be the case in his last terms. That may all be true. Those things that Trump says and perhaps will be putting into effect, maybe he shouldn't. I don't know. But again, it's a difficult case for the Democrats, the opposition now, to make against Trump because their candidate was Kamala Harris, who was an appointed candidate, maybe anti-democratic. You might make the claim nobody voted for her. There were no primaries where people voted for her when she was on the ballot. And of course, the defense is that's all nice and legal. We just appointed somebody and then we told you that she's completely qualified and she's going to win. So I think a lot of people have seen through that. And I don't know, people who come at you with the excuse that it was all nice and legal and the system allows them to appoint a candidate, even after the primaries ended and people have voted for Biden, for someone else, those are the politician lawyers who really don't see ethical things in the same way other people do. And it's something that I think many people find distasteful. It's not a very good argument for Harris's candidacy, which I did not hate at all. But it's hard to be calling Trump anti-democratic on one side when you have a candidate who has been appointed like Harris was. And as it turns out, she wasn't the right candidate for the job. Let's see what else we have here. We have an interesting article, I think, from just right after the election. I'd wanted to bring this up in the last video, but I didn't have time. This was how Trump won the election. Sometimes when you get to these overseas media places like a BBC or a DW, I think it's Deutsche Welle, something like that. Sorry. But they don't have the spin that the big major news companies in the U.S. have for the Democrats and against Trump, like CNN and like MSNBC. So here they point out, the key demographics. I think the Democrats, many people rank and file, assume Kamala Harris, she's half black, thus all black people must vote for her. That was not the case at all. Trump got doubled his showing with people who happened to be black, and Latinos as well were very high as well. So this probably has to do with the economy. And it does show, no matter how many times the media said Trump is either a joke or a threat to democracy, people still vote with their pocketbooks in the U.S. I believe that's what it is. Certainly, even I, as you're watching some of my own videos, a lot of people overvalued the freedom that women have to have abortions, and that did not. The Democrats using this issue so prominently in the campaign didn't seem to resonate. And here is again what I'm saying. The main issue is inflation. It's hard to win when economic times are bad. And they essentially, for most of the campaign, depended on the media to tell people they were mistaken, as I mentioned before. If you go back to some of my videos in January, this is where that vibe economy thing came out, where all at once, all the big news operations in the United States started telling people they were mistaken if they thought inflation was high and things were better than ever. That didn't turn out to be a good winning strategy. And for most of Harris's campaign, anytime she was asked about economy, she went into a preset speech about, I was born in a middle-class family, and this, and completely avoided the question. I cringed more and more when I heard that, and I wish they didn't have her say that. I know there was one brief moment, interlude in the campaign, where she started to talk about some issues to tamp down inflation, but then that disappeared. And I think if somebody writes a book about Harris and really objectively looks into it, I think there were a lot of mysterious figures in the background controlling how the campaign was going. And so I think we'll see that at one point there were people that wanted to address the inflation issue for a brief moment, and then those people were pushed aside, and she was back to her spiel about avoiding the question with a preset rant about, I was born in a middle-class family and blah, 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 and put bread on the table. It was terrible. Again, here they mention Ukraine's not a major concern for voters. Yeah, I mean, during the Biden administration, I talked about this extensively in previous videos. The international system broke down with countries sensing the U.S. Disengagement from the world and making their moves. And U.S. voters had been told by the media that wars were bad under George W. Bush, and that George W. Bush was a war criminal and he was a clown, and we can't afford these wars. I think a lot of Republicans ended up believing that. Now we have a Democratic administration that is trying to make the case for hundreds of billions to Ukraine, and Americans are saying inflation's too high, we don't care. Now, CNN may be, I don't trust CNN. I didn't before. No one should trust them after the election results, after the way the news was spun up to give everyone the impression that Harris was a shoo-in. Last video I explained about, going up to the election, I hadn't looked at the polls, and the media was saying that it was all Harris and she's going to win. That was all over social media as well. Sorry. And when I looked at the polls, I looked at those toss-up states, the only states that mattered, and they had been trending for a little. They were almost too close to call, trending for Trump a little bit. And then I knew Republicans always poll a little bit under because people are afraid to tell people that they want to vote for Trump because of how the media with one voice says that, he's a fascist, he's anti-democratic. So when I saw those poll results, I realized, oh my gosh, the media is not telling the truth. At very best, it's too close to call, but the Republicans have an edge, and that's exactly what happened. However, in this case, again, I will agree with CNN in this case. Hard for the incumbent government to win when economic times are bad. And now, only now after the election was over, does the media even admit this to us. This is another interesting thing that came up. Another part of the media manipulation, and this is polling manipulation, where Republicans way ahead in Iowa. I think they were 11 to 13 points ahead in every poll, and just a few days before the election, suddenly there was a shock poll that said Harris had pulled ahead by 2 points. Impossible. And I think many people in the Republicans said, this truly is a fake kind of when a political party like the Democrats really put their tendrils into the polling mechanism, and it was impossible. And it was done only right before the election to give the media something to, again, give people the impression that Harris was a shoo-in. You know, maybe you don't even need to go out to vote for Trump because she's a shoo-in. And this was all over the news. I don't know legally if Trump suing over this fake news that came out, that the polling organization put out. Because after the election, Trump carried Iowa by 13 points. So clearly there was something wrong. And I'd be interested to see how this polling company can justify putting out this kind of crazy poll that appears on the surface. It seems like it was intended to sway the election and to feed into the narrative that the media, which pretends to be objective, was trying to tell people about what was happening, to say there was this groundswell for Harris. Maybe this is the real story, and no party, Republicans or Democrats, have really weighed in on the deficit. It seems to have been avoided by the Republicans. U.S. has at least I think a $34 trillion debt. And at one point during the Biden administration, the deficit was going up $1 trillion every 100 days. So here we're talking about the mother of all bubbles. So certainly this information that's being reported in the media and played up finally for the first time in a long time is because people who are Democrats in the media, who supported the Democrats and didn't want to bring up this thorny issue, now they want to lay it at the feet of the new Republican administration and say, oh, you're courting disaster. And now that the Democrats aren't in power anymore, the deficit is the biggest issue in politics. Didn't used to be, but suddenly, because there's another party, it is, and we're going to hang this around your neck. Yeah, every hero has its fatal flaw. America's is its sharply increasing addiction to government debt. And they've spent, really since one of the best presidents, Clinton. He balanced the budget, got the national debt way down, and since then, all the presidents, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Trump, Biden, and now Trump, well, we'll see what happens. All these presidents have run the deficit up like $1 trillion at least a year. And people are starting to think it can't last forever. And this, I just wanted to mention it. Myanmar, it's a country used to be called Burma. You know, I spend a lot of time in Thailand and Singapore. Even there, I'm suffused by the English language news about the region. And I can read a little bit of the Thai language as well. And Myanmar, even in this region, even when you're a country that's next door to Burma, not much said about what's going on. But what has happened is, since the coup in 2021, uh, the, the country has started to fall apart. There was seemed to be a coordinated rebellion at one point, and right now, this was a good BBC map that came out just last week. You see the military, they only control these three cities: Mandalay, Naypyidaw, and Yangon. Used to be called Rangoon. And the green areas are the military control areas. The light green are contested areas, and the rest are various resistance groups and ethnic armies. Now, this country is about as big in land area as Texas, I believe, very large, and it's hardly has any easy way to transport between regions. It has each of these states are usually completely ethnically they're controlled by one ethnic group or another, certain kind of a balkanization situation. So Myanmar is geographically and ethnically predisposed to be kind of fractured like this, and has been for a long time. But this situation, with the ruling military being reduced down to these very small areas, and there's even been terrorist acts to target military leaders in the three main cities. There've been rocket launchers in Mandalay, this area. So it's a scary situation, I'm sure, for the military that thought they were going to take everything over, and threw Aung San Suu Kyi in jail. And what's happening there is, it's my understanding, the U.S. isn't quite involved. Myanmar isn't considered an important country. It's not on the radar. I'm sure you haven't heard much about this. There's a big deal going on here. And as I say, even in the region, not much said about it. And now China seems to be coming in to try to prevent the final dissolving of the central authority in Myanmar, which could be another interesting domino for China to obtain, to gain influence. And they're putting pressure on some of these ethnic groups in these regions to negotiate with the military to preserve the central authority. But yeah, and it is not much, just one of those countries. It's one of the lesser developed countries of the world, certainly of Asia. You could look up this Irrawaddy.com website, and they're sort of a cheerleader for the rebellion, but it is an interesting situation over there. And my impression is that, generally, historically, Myanmar has not been an important country. Nobody cares about it. They don't report it. But it could be becoming a more consequential country now because China's involvement. China firms up its control or gains influence through its negotiation with the ethnic groups. Could be another area where they hold sway, as they already have essentially turned Cambodia into a vassal state. Their tourism is sort of becoming the most important tourism in Thailand, and they're flexing their muscle in the South China Seas. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that because that is an area where that is missed by the news. I think about maybe late last year, I also just had a show on this just to talk about it as an underreported situation in the world. Last thing, I wanted to quickly get to these Brendon Burchard predictions. If you don't know him, if you about self-help and business sales training, if you're into that, he's kind of the new age Brian Tracy. About 10 years ago, I found him. I signed up for some of his courses about marketing and salesmanship. fantastic. I think he is the place to go for modern age. If you're looking for the new age of Brian Tracy, it's Brendon Burchard. He's one of those persons who gets, you get to a certain level, you can get a good agent, and you can get into Oprah's show. Here he is with the Dalai Lama and Larry King, of all people. But it really is. It's a lot of good quality stuff about marketing and managing yourself and your mind. So we come to this a few days ago on his Instagram site. There were posted the predictions for 2025. A lot of people posted there. I posted something in response. And then it disappeared. And I think people began to wonder whether those predictions were for kind of the inside, the people who pay, you get the inside information and his thoughts. Because the predictions of what's going to happen, that's the thing that's valuable. That's the thing that people will pay for. So I did write I send messages to his Instagram and Facebook saying, were these posted by mistakes? Why were they deleted, et cetera, et cetera? But there were some interesting points. And these predictions were about AGI. I believe it's artificial general intelligence. So right now, apparently, artificial intelligence is based around a certain domain of information, a silo of information. Eventually, AGI is supposed to be essentially like a human being, can function as a human being across all kinds of subjects behind the scenes. So you have a virtual person who, like when you go to a website now that has AI help, all they do is just, it refers you into the frequently asked questions files. You can see when you ask it a question, it's just pulling the information from the little silo that it knows, which is the frequently asked questions. But in the future, this is supposedly another higher level. And he was saying things about they're going to eventually take over most jobs. There's going to be huge unemployment. In a few years, there'll only be 30% of the jobs we have now left. This year, the lawmakers are going to rush to change the laws to facilitate this change in the economy, where almost all the jobs are done by AGI agents, and thus we dummy people, we're only supposed to spend. There's no way for us to make money. Also talking about Bitcoin shocks to the economy, like it's all going to be Bitcoin, all going to be AI. So a lot of people have said that. The media have hyped that. And as we've noted, you can't really trust the media anymore. And so my response to this AI takeover of jobs is, what they're saying about AGI now, that there'll be a person that can take over the jobs and has a wide range of subjects it can tackle like a person, and it can take over. That's what, remember a couple years ago when AI came out? That's what they were telling us about AI then. Only later did we realize it was just kind of scraping net content and blending it together. So the reason that AI continues to be hyped like this, even by someone like Brendon Burchard, who I love, and in his prediction, he's talking about this is what the CEOs that he advised tell him. But the reason these CEOs have to push this, why they have in the past and in the future, was that the tech companies who are developing the AI, the legacy tech companies, they have piles of money, and they found their existing revenue streams, which were ads, dwindling a few years ago. And that's why this new move into AI is supposed to change that, because it keeps people on the page. If the AI on Google tells you the search results, you don't have to click through to a link to another page. It captures people into that. And this can be another way to preserve the dominance in that realm of search and in ads that are served on those pages, since you don't want people moving away from your search page. So beyond that, if AI does take over all of the jobs, it's not very likely, as this prediction supposedly said, that lawmakers will have to rush to change laws to change the labor situation, to facilitate this great revolution in technology. It's much more likely that people will rebel in a Luddite fashion against losing all of the jobs over a short period of time. So it's much more likely there'll be laws made restricting AI use as opposed to allowing it. And I think that's even when you have someone like Elon Musk very much ensconced in government, people like Zuckerberg ensconced in government, I think still the voice of the people, they aren't going to sit by when jobs disappear like that. Then on top of that, it's much more likely prediction of 2025, instead of AI taking over all the jobs, that there will be that long overdue cyclical downturn in the economy that was only propped up for so long by that deficit spending we just talked about. So that's what's more likely to happen. And, the media is, again, they oppose, by and large, Trump. They're going to play up any kind of economic shock. It's in their interest that things go bad. It just is. For Trump, we can move away from the Brendon Burchard predictions, if they were his predictions. They were on his website. For Trump, they say he's a threat to democracy. But Trump is a known quantity. He was already president, so we can look at the way he governed. Rather chaotic, rather pragmatic. And we know the media will overhype and misrepresent everything he does, for good or bad. And I think there's a lot of negative things that can come out of the Trump presidency. But if you feel that, you would also say perhaps his style of leadership will, the chaotic fashion will, create enemies within his own camp, and perhaps mute some of the more extreme things if you fear that that's what's going to happen. But we'll see. And that's sort of a wrap-up of, not really of the year, but of the last 6 months, which have been very momentous. And I continue to do these shows. I think I have some interesting observations. I'm trying to develop and maintain my own screen or radio presence. And I hope you enjoy these, and I hope that you will stay tuned and watch more of these. Like and subscribe. Doesn't take much. The intent of these videos is so we don't listen to the media that's essentially lying to us, that we don't get caught up in marching in someone else's parade, going down in someone else's fight. Try to really understand what's actually happening. That's what I'm trying to do. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and stay tuned for more videos. Bye-bye.